You're listening to the Common Descent Podcast. And welcome to Spookulative Evolution.
Hello, David.
Hello, Will Harris.
And hello, listeners.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to episode 2 of Spook-E 2019.
Spooky!
This episode is following up our last one where we talked about the harpy. We're now talking about Greek myth monsters this year. This series, once again, the point is to take a monster, look at how it would evolve, think of how we would naturally achieve either the appearance or the actual thing, or as close as we can get to both of those, and how we would explain its weird abilities or traits.
How would we build this monster using the limited tool set of Earth-based natural selection?
It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be a little silly. It's not meant to be the definitive say-so on either evolution or this creature.
It's speculative evolution with a Halloween-y twist.
This episode, we're talking about Gorgons.
Gorgons.
Gorgons. So the Gorgon, or Gorgons, usually there's 3, are a very famous, like nowadays a lot of people know about them. Usually they call them Medusas.
Yep.
Though that's inaccurate for one very clear reason in their stories usually. But Gorgons are really well known as a Greek monster today, but they did not originally look like how you are probably picturing them right now. Gorgons were a Greek monster, once again feminine. It was a woman monster that was
Girl power.
girl power, horrible power, evil. These were often described as having very round faces with large eyes, typically a flat nose, usually prominent teeth. Like they're typically shown with these like almost curved tusks, very much like an oni, which we referenced last time. Often with, sometimes it just says serpentine hair,
Okay.
which could be like dreads.
Right.
Or weird, like, predator dreads, tentacly hair. Other times it says snakes for hair.
Yes.
Usually specifying venomous.
Okay.
They're usually supposed to be venomous snakes for hair. And winged.
Really?
Yes, the original versions of Gorgons were winged females with a prominent face features, but nothing else.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, you may be saying, no, you did that last episode.
We sure did.
And the truth is, yeah, they're actually really similar to harpies in the old mythology. Now, they have different stories with them. Very prominent, very distinctly different stories. But no, they're actually very similar to harpies. They're nasty, winged women. Which, once again, probably speaks volumes to the mentalities of, I'm sure, the men telling these stories.
It might indeed.
But that's actually what Gorgons used to be. And so, right now, you're probably going, no. They're like snake mermaids.
Yeah. Which is better.
Yeah, they're half snake with a woman's torso and then snakes for hair.
Why would you try to take snake women away from me?
Yeah. And that is the most popular image of a Gorgon.
Okay.
But it did not come around until 1981.
Interesting.
In the Clash of the Titans movie.
Oh, so not really a Greek mythical monster.
Not in that form.
A
now,
reimagined Greek monster.
The stories have not really changed with them.
Okay.
But their specific form. And man, oh man, did Clash of the Titans rebrand them. Not only is almost every picture you can find of Medusa or a Gorgon a half-snake female, they're also almost always carrying a bow instead of arrows. Just like she was in Clash of the Titans.
So Clash of the Titans did for Gorgons what Jurassic Park did for Velociraptors.
Exactly.
Cool. I guess T-Rex would be a better comparison.
but absolutely, like, it is such a...
Or Dilophosaurus.
Yes. Oh, no, that's the perfect example. It is such a classic movie and such a linchpin in our culture that is now how Gorgons are portrayed. I've never seen a classic Gorgon portrayed in film or modern media.
Interesting.
Like, I can't think of a single example where I've seen something made in recent years that shows them as a winged with a very odd face. It's almost always snake-like with pretty normal feminine features. Usually, sometimes they're ugly. Like, sometimes they're craggy skinned or scaly skinned, and they're
I've seen that.
disturbing, but they still just look like a woman or a human face. You know, the old stories of Gorgons sometimes gave them scraggly beards, like they were troll-esque.
Interesting.
In their features, with the flat, bulby nose and unusually big eyes. Round face is one of the big ones. Like, almost every description I found was, no, round face. And the sculptures of them show them with round faces. This actually gets into the famous superpower that they're always said to have, which is that gaze that turns you to stone. In original writings, it wasn't a gaze, it was a visage. They were so gosh darn ugly, it turns you to stone.
Yep. I would rather be stoned than have to look at this anymore.
And that was actually the idea. It wasn't laser eyes, which is what it's typically shown as today, because do you know how the one did it in Clash of the Titans?
Oh, I bet it was with laser eyes.
With laser eyes. So it's not supposed to be the Medusa's gaze or the Gorgon's gaze. It's looking upon them turned you to stone because they were supposed to be so horrifying.
Interesting.
In many stories, it takes a step past that, where it's not just that they're unpleasant to look at, that they're kind of troll-esque, but they're just disgusting, just unsettling, bad, evil, disturbing creatures.
Blah.
And so that's what Gorgons were.
Okay.
We've updated them nowadays to be snake mermaids.
Yes.
With snake hair and a bow and arrow for some reason.
Now, when you say snake mermaids, you're saying lower half of the body. It's a snake, and at the end of the snake, the front end of the snake is a person.
Is a person's torso.
Arms, face, and then snake hair.
Yep. And so that's the modern depiction of a Gorgon. With that depiction, there are some key features that usually show up as well. In Clash of the Titans, she had the bow and arrow. She had a rattlesnake tail.
Okay.
And she would activate her gaze to turn you to stone. So that was something she did to you.
So it wasn't just if you meet their eyes, you get turned to stone. It was, I turn on this power.
Exactly. And that's been true in a lot of the other versions that you see with Gorgons, that they gaze at you pointedly to turn you to stone, and then a lot of times they give them a rattlesnake tail. But I think that's also just artists like to give snakes rattlesnake tails.
They do.
Yeah.
It's among the coolest tails.
It really
of snakes.
is.
It's not the coolest tail.
There is another Greek figure that connects to this. So this may not have been wholly Hollywood just reformatting something. Hollywood may have been drawing from the story of Lamia.
Oh.
Which is another character who sometimes is pictured as a half-woman, half-snake being.
Which you may also know them, as I know, as soon as you said it, from the Monster Manual.
Yes.
In D&D.
And now her story is ridiculously disturbing. So Lamia was originally a beautiful woman, as all women were originally almost in Greek stories. They always describe them. It's important you know that they were pretty.
Let me spend a page describing how attractive this woman was.
Who was noticed by Zeus, as most women were in Greek myths.
Yeah, only the beautiful ones.
Yep. How long did they write about it? All right, I'll check it out.
A whole page, you say?
This one's a page turner.
Oh.
After Zeus went down and messed around, Hera found out, and as Hera always does, because she can't punish the king of gods,
right,
she attacks the women he was with, or the offspring of the women he was with.
Naturally.
So she curses Lamia to kill her own children.
Oh, great.
Driving her insane, and then she is now cursed to be a sleepless creature, which Zeus fixes by letting her remove her eyes, and I couldn't find any explanation for how that fixes that.
Because Zeus said so.
Because she couldn't cry them out or something, because she couldn't, now that let her stop weeping or something like that. But she is now a creature that goes and feeds upon other children. Yeah, and there's even more creepy parts of her story, which I don't feel like getting into because it's not necessarily important.
Thanks, Greeks.
But she's super disturbing, and sometimes she's depicted as this monster, like literally a boogeyman, to be like, you better behave, or
Right, right, right.
Lamia will come get you.
Eat your broccoli.
Yes.
Or whatever they had in Greece.
Yes. Eat your goat cheese.
Eat your... Thank you. That's good.
And so sometimes she's that. Other times she's a seductress, luring men and everything.
Right. Those two go together.
Yep, right? But
it's that eyeless... It's those bedroom not eyes.
Yes, it's that look in her eyes I can't see. That I assume is there.
Yeah.
But often she's depicted as half snake. So maybe they were influenced by that.
Okay.
There was a version of Gorgon-esque character in the old Hercules TV show. Hercules: The Legendary Journeys was a TV show back when I was a kid that I loved a lot. It crossed over with Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. In this, there is one episode with a monster that's called the She-Demon.
Naturally.
Yep. And it is a half-woman, half-snake creature. Very picturesque, typically beautiful, or classically, I guess is the right word.
The media's depiction of beauty.
On the top, wearing a long dress so you can't see the snake part right away.
That's how they get you.
That would seduce men to come to her cave, and then would turn them to stone when they got there. Now, she turned them to stone with the tip of her tail, which did have like a rattlesnake rattle on it, but in the show it would glow, and basically a magical sting is what she would use to turn them to stone. Which was interesting. So she was like a kind of weird fusion of these two characters, where there was no snake hair, there was nothing like that, and she was just a woman on top. There was nothing snaky or monstery about her.
Right.
Until she whipped you with her tail.
Right. Snake mermaid.
Snake mermaid.
Surmaid.
Surmaid.
Like a serpent.
Maid. A snade.
A smade.
So those are all different versions that have been interpreted for a Gorgon. Now the original story, or most famous story, the one that's most well known, and almost every time you've ever seen a Gorgon or Medusa show up in anything, it's this story it's retelling.
All right.
And it is the one being told by the Clash of the Titans.
Okay.
This is the story of Perseus.
Yes.
Which is typically what it's called, the story of Perseus. Now, Perseus also shows up in a lot of the other myths.
Right. All those. Perseus, Odysseus, Theseus.
Yes, all the us's.
A lot of yeses.
Greek myths were actually a lot like, they were like the original version of the MCU. Where like, you may not have known this, but Hercules shows up in Jason of the Argonauts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like he's one of the Argonauts.
Well, he's the one, if you go to Hell's Kitchen, you're going to encounter Hercules.
Yeah, he's on the boat and then leaves midway through the adventure to go do Hercules adventures.
Nice.
Like, they had heroes cross over all the time. Because
cool.
you would tell a story, I'd go, that Hercules was fun. I want him to hang out with Perseus.
Yeah.
So, in this story, Perseus is a demigod. He is the son of Zeus and his mother Danae. She gives birth to him. He is now part god. So he is a demigod, which a lot of heroes in Greek myths are. They're part god, which means they're superpowered.
Because Zeus was Zeusing it all up.
Yep, Zeusing on everything. She was the daughter of the king of Argos, which connects to the Argonauts, but that's a different story. A different king of the island of Seriphos fell in love with his mother. Perseus could tell that he was not an honorable man and protected his mother from this king. And to try to get rid of Perseus, the king came up with a plan. So he held a big banquet and said, everyone bring horses, because I'm going to give these horses to Hippodamia, who is she who is master of horses. Who's masters horses.
Right, Hippo.
That's what her name means.
Yep.
He was going to give them as a gift to her, or as a marriage proposal was the ruse, but Perseus had no horse. So Perseus, being a hero, is like, ask anything you will of me, and I will do it, because I am a brash hero, and I say things like this. And the king went, oh, it's so convenient you said that. Please go kill Medusa of the Gorgons and bring her head back to me. And that's where Perseus decided to go off to make good on his promise to this guy he hates.
Right.
Because Greek myths.
What are we, some sort of suicide squad?
So he sets off on a journey to kill Medusa. Now, the important note here is there are 3 Gorgons in most versions of of mythology. Cthano, Uriel, and Medusa.
With apologies to people who know how to pronounce these names.
Oh, absolutely.
Scientific names, that I can do. This nonsense?
No. Their names translate to, in the same order, the Mighty, the Far Springer, and the Queen.
Okay.
So Medusa was, if not the Queen, that's what her name meant.
Right.
Of the Gorgons. 3 sisters, all of which were immortal except for Medusa.
Right, because
Medusa has to die in the story.
naturally.
So I've never seen anything that references why the other 2 are immortal, but there is a story potentially for why Medusa's not immortal, which came on later in mythology, but it has to do with that she was originally a fair human who was sought after by Poseidon, who raped her in Athena's temple.
Naturally.
So, of course, Athena turned her into a Gorgon.
Well, yeah.
Because she was insulted. Because Greek mythology.
Yeah.
It's not the most progressive of the stories.
It's victim blaming.
Yeah. Like,
hardcore.
So, there are versions that say Medusa that's the reason she wasn't immortal, and that she was the fairest of the 3, while the other 2 were horrifying.
Right, and that was the trade-off. You're beautiful, but you have to die.
Yeah. So, now that's not all versions of Medusa. In some versions, she's just not mortal. She's just not immortal for some reason. But Perseus sets off to kill Medusa. He uses some tools, which are important. He gets a golden sword from Athena. He gets a special sack to put her head in so that he doesn't have to look at it. He gets a special helmet of Hades that helps him hide. But the important part is a polished shield that he uses to sneak up on Medusa by looking at her reflection and not her. And that's how he avoids being turned to stone.
Yes.
He does this heroic thing by sneaking up on her while she sleeps.
Yep.
And beheading her.
Yep.
That's
like a hero
like
would
a
do.
hero does. And then he escapes with the head and uses it to turn another person into stone who was not hospitable to him, if I remember right.
Right, and then the story goes on.
And in the movie, he uses it to kill the Kraken, which was released to claim a sacrificial maiden. So that's the Clash of the Titans movie. He uses it for something dramatic, but in the story, he doesn't.
So shield,
reflective
sees her in
shield,
reflection, so he doesn't have to look at her.
And then
gets
when he
the head,
beheads her, from her blood is birthed Pegasus.
Oh.
Yeah, Pegasus, the flying horse that's super duper famous, was birthed from the bleeding neck of Medusa.
And there's that.
Yeah. Not just Pegasus, but Pegasus' brother.
Phil.
Chrysaor, the sword of gold, who is just a dude, just a young man. Were both born from there. Because Poseidon had sex with her, there was magic in her blood.
There must have been some magic in that old severed head.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those are Gorgons, and that's the story of them.
Cool, let's evolve that.
Now, of course, this one really requires the magic disclaimer.
Yes. No magic.
We can't evolve magic. At least we haven't learned how.
We are using the tools of natural selection.
Once the wizards tell us muggles how it happened with them, we'll know genetically how it happens. But, so we have to skip some magical abilities. The most obvious one is we can't have horses with wings jumping out of her neck.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna. But there's enough interesting stuff to touch on.
Yes.
Without that.
Absolutely. So, how do you evolve a Gorgon?
So, I assume that we are going to go with the Neo version of the Gorgons, where they are snake people with snake hair.
Yes.
Partially because the original are very much like harpies, which we did last time.
Very similar.
And also because snakes.
And also because it's better.
Now.
Yes.
Like, put on my snake hat. The snakes are cool. But these are creatures with long snake-like bodies, but forelimbs.
Yes.
Now, snakes, very famously, have lost all of their limbs.
I've heard that about them.
There are snakes today that retain limbs.
Yep.
But they are vestiges of the hind limbs.
Absolutely.
Similar to how moas lost the front limbs and retained the hind limbs. Snakes, there's no precedence for snakes, proper snakes, keeping their front limbs and losing their hind limbs.
Yes, it's very true.
But there are other animals that have done it.
It's true.
Like, whales have pretty much done that.
Absolutely,
But they're not very snaky. So
Basilosaurus, maybe.
the two that come to my mind, one are a group of amphibians called sirens.
Yep.
Which sounds like a Greek creature, which are long, salamander-like aquatic amphibians
Yep.
that have front arms and no legs. But the other one, which I much prefer for this, is a type of amphisbaenian, which are sometimes called worm lizards. They are lizards that... So, leglessness and long, legless bodies have evolved like 24 times or something in lizards. Snakes are one example, but there's tons of other lizards. Amphisbaenians are these burrowing, usually very small, worm-like lizards. There is a genus called Bipes.
Bipes!
Whose name means 2 feet.
Yep.
And it has this long, tube-shaped body, kind of earthworm-looking, but
very earthworm.
Rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Not rigid like hard, like with ridges.
Yes, it's got... It almost looks like it's made out of rings.
Yeah, like a slinky.
Yes.
Sort of. But they have these two...
It's like a vacuum cleaner hose.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like a long vacuum cleaner hose. But they have their front limbs, but not like little dinky flaps.
No.
Like fully...
Little mole arms.
Mole arms. And then they have round, short faces.
Yes, they do.
With these beady eyes and this wide mouth that looks like a little smile.
They're adorable.
They are It is one of nature's best goes at something that is adorable and creepy.
Yes. No, absolutely.
This is an animal that is a vacuum cleaner hose with 2 mole-like arms. Not like huge mole-like arms, but like they're like
and
robust
when they move
arms.
around, they're using them. So they're functional arms.
And this round, smiling face.
Mm-hmm.
That's my vote for where we start.
The Bipes is one of those creatures where if you saw it poke around the corner, you'd be like, "Oh, hey, you!" And then as it came over and just kept coming, you'd be like, Yeah.
Yep. So all we need is giant Bipes.
Yes, giant Bipes is one way. Now, I did also have an idea, so I looked it up, because there are some fossil snakes that have more notable limbs still present. And one of them, Tetrapodophis, had what seems to be 4 functional limbs.
Yes.
So if we started from there...
And you could lose the back limbs.
We could lose the back and get to a similar position.
Disclaimer time, Tetrapodophis is a very controversial specimen.
Yeah.
May or may not actually be a snake, and also has disappeared into the private collection where it may or may not be legally allowed to be, so who knows what Tetrapodophis is. But I see your point.
Exactly. Yeah, that one's the one
a long
potential example.
A skink-like creature that has 4 limbs and then loses the back ones instead of losing the front.
Absolutely. Now, Bipes definitely gives us our best definite stand-in and definite working model.
I do really like the Bipes.
Absolutely.
There will be time for snakes. There's always time for snakes. Bipes is just, it's too good to pass up.
So if we are using Bipes, and even if we aren't using Bipes, the next question to me that's obvious to answer here, even before we get to turning something to stone and figuring out how that plays in, snake hair.
So I'm assuming that our Bipes is gigantic.
Yes.
So I don't know off the top of my head how big Bipes is.
It's itty bitty.
But they're very small. Very, very small.
Yeah.
But there is precedent for legless lizards to get rather large. Like the glass lizards, which can be like 5 or 6 feet. Mm-hmm. There's also snakes.
Yep.
Famously, the largest snake, which we talked about in episode 3, was Titanoboa, which was in the 40 to 50 foot range.
So we could get a big-sized, a true Naga, which is an Indian set of semi-deities that have something to do with the underworld, if I'm right.
I think so.
They actually look very much like how Medusa is drawn nowadays.
Also in the Monster Manual.
Yes, they are.
So Titanoboa presumably...
Oh, wait. But for a fun fact, in the Monster Manual, there are Gorgons, which are metallic bulls that breathe petrifying gas on you.
Yes, they do.
Because what?
Wizards. So Titanoboa presumably reached its size as a combination of equitable climates.
Yes.
And being probably something aquatic.
Yes.
Semi-aquatic more so than digging. So we could certainly have a bipes-like organism that evolutionarily follows a trend similar to snakes that started out as possibly fossorial, episode 3, and then starts invading terrestrial niches, and then perhaps gives rise to a form that finds the right combination of climate and suitable habitat and suitable prey to become ridiculously large.
Yes, and we would need something big if we were wanting to have a human resembling torso.
Right.
Like, we're not huge animals, but
No.
a snake that was as big around as me,
That's a big snake.
that's a big snake. And that's not me saying I'm notably big, but just
Oh no, even a bit as big around as me.
a human-widthed snake is going to be a very long snake.
So our bipes, once it's above land, you can now have it using its arms for other things.
And I like
catching food.
whatever ancestor ours coming from, whether it is a bipes ancestor or whether it's another lizard, but I like it being fossorial, and that's why it has the arms.
Starts out as a digger.
It's a digger, like me.
He's a digger. So now we have a bipes that is giant enough that its head is human sized.
Yes, and now it has arms roughly the same size as yours.
Right. And I like the idea that because of its ancestry, they're still beefy.
Yeah, it's got these clawed arms.
Beefy clawed arms.
These big mole hands.
Yeah. Which brings us on to your question.
So if we have
Why are there snakes in your hair?
Yeah, what would you have that would make someone say you had a wig of snakes?
I have an idea, but I'll let you go. Because I'm sure you have an idea.
So I think our ideas
Probably the same.
sync up because it was the favorite one I came up. But I did have some. There could be displays. You know,
Sure.
You could have displays that seem very snake-like. You know, if you have iguana crests,
Right.
where there are these multiple spines sticking out that sometimes are kind of bendy and floppy.
Right.
And so, like, you could have this display on your head that, especially if you can move it like an anole fan, you know, make it go up and down when you want to display it, you could have it looking like you have these wriggling snakes on your head.
And there is precedence for animals having snake-like body
Yes,
parts. There's
absolutely.
those caterpillars
Mm-hmm.
that look like snakes to ward off predators.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know why
Something this big.
a human-sized, two-armed, lizardy snake creature needs to ward off predators.
Maybe...
So those harpies.
I was supposed to say, maybe it could be. I'm almost hesitant to suggest this because I just thought of it and I like it, but I don't like it as much as my other idea.
Yes.
But it's actually kind of fun. What if it was a lure?
I was thinking that maybe it's a lure.
Yeah, it's, hey,
That
birds. Ooh, look at all these little snakes. Ooh,
You're drawing it.
Look at them all.
Witches?
Yes.
Totally cool. Also, I'm going to take this opportunity to say, when we were talking about the harpies, and I tried to think of like the example of primates that glided, colugos. That's what they're called. They're colugos. Colugos are like real closely related to primates, and they glide. I went with sugar gliders, which we probably have edited out of that episode because they're marsupials, and I didn't want to sound like an idiot. But colugos, they had skin wings. That's what our harpies are. So they could be lures.
When they're luring the harpy colugo ancestor or descendants,
The calarpy.
the calarpies,
Or
maybe you actually do have some little animals sitting on top of your head.
maybe you do.
So it could be something more like brood care.
Yep.
Where
That was
you're
my answer.
Carrying your young.
And there is precedence for this. So amphibians,
Yes.
very famously among vertebrates, do this.
And in the best, creepiest way.
Where you'll have frogs that carry their eggs in their skin.
Yep. Some of them swallow
Ugh.
their babies.
And there are also caecilians,
Yes.
which are little snake-like amphibians, aquatic amphibians, who I don't know that they carry their babies, but they do spend a little bit of time with their babies eating their skin.
Yeah, they shed their skin, they shed the outer layer, and then the babies use their itty-bitty little shark teeth. If you ever look up a picture of a caecilian, they're like little shark worms. They've got this row of just razor sharp teeth.
Oh, yeah.
And the babies eat the shed skin of the mom by ripping it off of her.
So they're feeding on
Yes.
the mom.
Mm-hmm.
Our bipes could feasibly be brood carrying
Absolutely.
on its head.
And the image I immediately get is the wolf spider, which is probably one of the most famous of something carrying its stuff because it's the one that most people have accidentally discovered.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one where you've probably seen a video online at some point of someone touching a spider that looks weird, or squishing it is the sadder version.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, little spiders go everywhere.
And then spiders.
And it's just, you have summoned...
What have you unleashed?
Wolf spiders, and certain scorpions, but not many others, will actually carry the wolf spider mother will carry the webbed egg sac on her abdomen. And then when they hatch, they will gather around her legs and on top of her abdomen and stay there until they're mature enough to leave.
Yeah.
So she'll actually literally be covered in walking baby spiders for a short time. Cool. So I picture very much that of just them clinging to the head and moving around it some. But if they have little hands, they could be literally grabbing the scalp.
Holding on.
So in ours, you wouldn't have the snake heads hanging off necessarily. You would have tails unless they had some way to attach themselves.
Right.
Like if there were potholes in there, like the frogs for the babies to
Well, and I was thinking that
curl into.
You could also have it like the frogs where the eggs are embedded in the skin.
Yes.
And they are hatching out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which, now this would make that it mean that it is likely temporary.
Oh, absolutely.
That they're only going to look like this for a certain amount of time.
Maybe they are only looking like that when they're not underground or underwater or...
Right.
Maybe they come out and so you only ever see them unless you go hunting for one.
I also like the thought... because then the next question is you have all of 40 feet of body.
Yes.
Why are they on your head?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of there are crabs who will have their little egg pouch.
Yes.
On their abdomen or somewhere on their body.
Yeah, where the tail would be on a lobster.
And they use their legs and claws to groom it and keep it clean. Well, if you got all your eggs and little babies on your head, then you could be using your hands up front to keep it groomed and cleaned. I'm doing the motion right now. None of you can see this, but I'm a method actor. I'm grooming my head babies. And you could also be moving food up there.
Yes.
To feed your head babies.
There could be something about, if we go with the evolutionary path that you were fossorial, came out to start getting bigger, so came out from underground. And then if it was aquatic, like Titanoboa may have been, to then get to those large sizes where you're supporting your weight partially in the water most of the time, eggs drown. So maybe it's, I have to keep it above my head because I can't leave the water entirely.
Ooh.
Or I don't want to, but I can pop my torso out.
Right, because there's an amniotic egg.
Yes.
Unlike the amphibians, these eggs need to be out of the water.
So I can now carry them above the water without having to myself be isolated on land.
This is a weird thing for a vertebrate to do, for an amniote to do,
yeah.
And I'm totally on board.
Yeah.
Now, two other ideas, just to throw them out there, because I think there's also the symbiote idea.
That's very true.
That it could be a different species that takes residence up top, and maybe they're protecting the host in some way, maybe by turning things to stone. More on that in a second. And the host is grooming them and feeding them the way that it would groom itself. It's seeing them as part of itself. The other option, which is now we're talking fish.
Yes.
Is that it's sexual dimorphism again.
That's true.
And it's like an anglerfish where the big one's the female and you have all these little males up top.
Oh, yes.
And they're just there making sperm for when she's making babies.
Yes, very true.
I want to throw those out there. I'm not sure I like them as much.
I do like the symbiote one to a degree. Because you could have it that it's either protecting somehow or it's something that just happens to be there. But there could be like a camouflage angle that when I'm crouched waiting for food to come by to pounce on and I'm laying down, this stuff on my head, which is actually alive, makes me blend in some,
Right.
if it's some sort of not plant necessarily, but some creature that blends you into the environment.
Right.
So there could be something there.
If it's a symbiote, then we're also not limited to making it the same species, and we could actually put snakes there.
Yes.
They could actually be proper snakes.
Yeah, it could be some weird parasitic snake.
Normal-sized snakes.
Yes.
And if you want to explain why they're in the head, you could even go the parasitic barnacle route.
Oh, yes.
And say that they're up in the head because they're rooted into the brain.
Ooh.
And they are controlling
that's
the body.
Interesting. That'd actually be a very interesting version, because then that would suggest that there are the Bipes giganticus running around, and then when they become infected, it's a Gorgon.
Yes.
Like...
That already exists.
Yeah, it's just a normal animal.
But the ones that... So, parasitic barnacles.
Yes, go ahead.
Get onto crabs, and the crabs have their little egg pouch area, and the barnacles get in the crab and then pop out in where the eggs pouch would be, and then start feeding hormonal signals into the crab's body to basically trick the crab into taking care of the parasite like it would its babies.
And they feed this into the crab with a root-like structure that enters the crab's body.
The original paper that described that, because I wrote about it for SciShow recently, said that the guy cut open this crab and found copper tubules that ramified through the entire body.
Yep. It's more barnacle than crab now.
So maybe we have both, actually. Maybe it's
that
the Bipes do brood their babies on their heads and then the parasites take over, or the parasites are their own thing.
Well, and you could get a parasite thing that's rooted into the brain and is like a tube worm.
Now
that's looking very snake-like and feeding, but not actually a snake.
And I was gonna say that, and again, this pains me.
Yes.
That the parasitic in your brain thing would be a real weird thing for a snake to do.
Yes.
But it's right up invertebrate alley.
Absolutely.
So like tube worms?
Yeah, some flexible like a parasitic bobbit worm type
that
thing.
Aren't burrowed into the sand, but instead have burrowed into the head of this animal and have linked themselves up with the nervous system. And actually the way that the parasitic barnacles work, and this is also how those tongue-eating isopods work that we talked about in our zombies episode of Spook-E. The tongue-biting isopods are these little arthropody, crustacean-y looking things that get into a fish's mouth and clamp down on the fish version of a tongue and then sit there in the tongue of the fish's mouth. But only the females do that. Or rather, the males that do that become the females. And then a bunch of males hang out in the gills.
Yes.
So maybe the wormy dudes in the head, to explain why there are so many of them.
Yes.
Maybe that's a bunch of males and there's a female in there somewhere.
Or it could be that
they are interacting with.
If there's any like hair going down the neck, those are smaller males versus the big ones on the head. Because
sure.
It can go down a bit, but it just shouldn't be the entire animal. And in truth, we can have all that parasitism without any mind control if we want to. Like,
this is true.
Doesn't have to. It can be these weird barnacle things that like to hook onto this animal, still feed on stuff, but are drawing from the blood. Or maybe this animal's lifestyle particularly well feeds them.
Right. Or it's that you are now on the head of a creature that no one's going to mess with.
Yes. It just ends up that way, like barnacles on a whale.
And maybe while it grooms itself with those the arms, it's also grooming you. And actually, you're also in a place where it can't bite you off.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe they are parasites that it doesn't mind.
Or it's harder for it to reach, because if it is a digging animal, it might not have all the mobility of its arms to fully scratch its head.
Or they help protect it.
Yes.
I like our parasite worms.
Yes, that is fun.
So it's some kind of weird worms that live up there and then also are invested in protecting the host.
Yeah.
So they have defense mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see where you're going.
See where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Which would bring us to them having something that approximates turning enemies to stone.
Yeah. So for stone turning, for petrification, my first thought was some kind of venom.
Yep, that's where I was going.
Some kind of neurotoxin. Something that neurotoxins attack the nervous system some way.
Yes, and a lot of animals
Yes.
will use neurotoxins as paralytics.
Absolutely.
Or some other kind of venom as paralytic. Shrews do this.
Yep.
A bunch of invertebrates,
The
spiders do this.
paralysis ticks
Yeah.
is because of a neurotoxin they release.
So you get the venom in the body, and then that prey usually is paralyzed by it.
Absolutely. Now, my favorite idea right off the bat, which is a pretty obvious connection going from the snaky Gorgon, was a spitting cobra.
That was also my thought.
Because the reason I like that is not only does that a ranged thing, so I don't have to touch you,
Yep.
which goes also a little nicely with the archer,
Yep.
but they aim for the ice.
Which means if you have a shield
Yeah.
that you're looking at it in your mirror shield, you're safe from the spitting venom.
If you look directly at them, you're vulnerable
Yep.
to paralysis.
So spitting cobras
Spitting cobras.
are the sort of the classic example of this within snakes.
Absolutely.
Their teeth are their fangs that are normally injecting are modified to shoot venom.
Yeah, the hole's pointing straight ahead instead of down the fang, so it squirts out.
And not only do they aim for the eyes, they're real good at it.
They are.
Shockingly accurate.
There's a great Steve Irwin where he interacts with a spitting cobra and he has this big surgery room face shield.
Yep.
And is just there with the cobra and everything is on this face shield. The venom is just dripping off of it once he's done interacting with this one.
So our parasitic worms
Mm-hmm.
could have, and there are invertebrates that shoot stuff as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
That shoot. I can't think of one that shoots venom. I know it exists.
No, I mean velvet worms shoot glue.
Yeah. But like a velvet worm, it could be like they shoot their glue. This is shooting a liquid.
I think there's a spider that infuses that it can shoot. I know there's a spider that can shoot web, and it's able to produce it through the fang somehow. And I think it does infuse it with venom, so it has a paralysis effect.
Interesting.
I'd have to double check that, so don't quote me on all the parts of that. But I know there is one that shoots web, and I'm pretty sure it's able to incorporate part of that into the web.
So our worms
Mm-hmm.
could do basically what velvet worms or spiders are doing, or spitting cobras,
Mm-hmm.
launching venom at enemies.
All right. I like that. And also, we can, if anyone's asking, like, how did they aim? There are tons of wormy, both feather worm style things and polychaete worms that have crude to slightly advanced eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So having eyes well enough to aim toward a target is not impossible within something like this.
Yeah, no, that you could do that. And honestly, if you wanted to make them true arthropods that had developed a wormy shape,
Yep.
give them compound eyes.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, I don't know what kind of eyes centipedes have.
I didn't notice them while taking the eye notes. Nothing ever mentioned them as standing apart
Yeah.
eye-wise.
Or like caterpillars
Mhm.
that have, a lot of caterpillars have long bodies and then just their legs up front.
Mm-hmm.
It could be spitting caterpillar like. Ooh, are these parasites the larval form of something?
Ooh, that's really interesting. They could be those predatory caterpillars with the spiky legs that grab flies. They act like a twig and then...
Ooh, well, now I'm thinking that it's like a ichneumoniid wasp thing where the eggs are laid in the head
Mm-hmm.
of the bipes, and then they hatch into these snaky larvae
Yeah,
that hang out there until they're ready to emerge.
I like that because that can explain why it's on the head. If this creature can't groom its head for some reason, like if it doesn't have the mobility,
Sure.
that the very top of its head is the hardest spot to get to, that would be a good place for them to lay it.
Yep.
The rest of its long, snaky body, it can easily
Yep.
reach around to and groom them off. And then it also gives a reason for them to be protective, not necessarily of the creature, but of their brooding site.
Yes, exactly. And it explains why there's so many of them.
Yes.
Because it's a nest.
It's an infestation.
So,
Ooh.
and then the venom gets into the eyes. Paralytic effect.
Yes.
We could even, if we really wanted to get wacky with it, there are disorders that can affect vertebrate bodies that cause excessive ossification.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that, normally in your body, between your bones and with your muscles, there are tendons and ligaments and things. There are certain conditions that can cause those tissues to harden, to form like bone is supposed to, or cartilage to form into a version of bone, to mineralize, or even muscle tissue. I can't remember the names of any of these, but
fibrosplasia ossificans progressiva.
I can see you thought of this too.
FOP. The Stone Man syndrome.
Yep.
Which is how I came upon it, looking for things. Yeah, the Stone Man syndrome. Usually, if you're like injured, like if you bump your arm, when your body goes to heal that area, due to a genetic condition, it regrows it as bone. So, as they put it, you literally start to grow a secondary skeleton.
Yep.
Within the tissue of your body, and so minor injuries can slowly progress you further and further down this Stone Man path.
This also came up in episode 53 about the baculum.
Yes.
With the discussion of whether or not there are bones in the human penis.
Mm-hmm.
Which it turns out probably not, but the cases that were seen were probably this kind of thing.
Yes.
An injury or a genetic mishap led to just more bone formation than was intended.
Mm-hmm. So something like that. Like if there's a way for these creatures to infect you with something.
Well, I don't know the underpinnings of that disease, that disorder.
From what I found with that one, there's a genetic defect. It's something you're born with.
But there are toxins in venoms that oftentimes work by taking advantage of things that can already happen in the body, and making your making your blood clot is something your body is already primed to do. The toxins in the venom are just activating it and messing it up,
triggering it too much or in the wrong order.
So maybe these toxins have some sort of epigenetic effect or something that triggers ossification. Doesn't even have to be intentional.
Yeah, no,
it could be an accidental side effect of the toxins.
If the toxins are neurotoxic at their base, you could, due to your nervous system being sabotaged, be paralyzed, and then a unfortunate side effect is you also start to ossify.
Yeah.
So after you've already been, petrified, you literally start to petrify.
Yes. If you don't become food for the giant bipes.
Yes, exactly.
Which we haven't talked about what it eats, but it's pretty big and you're pretty tasty.
Yep, I would assume. And that could also be something where, like, there are certain toxins that affect us in weird ways. The box jellyfish is one of my favorite examples, where the box jellyfish did not evolve to kill humans.
Right.
It evolved to kill fish, but it so happens that toxin they use is real effective in primates.
Interesting.
And that's why it's so horrifying for us. It's not just horrifying in general. From what I've read, there would be certain animals that if it got stung by them probably wouldn't do too much. It's why not all toxins affect all animals the same way. One animal could get stung by a bee and not react to it the same way as us. So maybe that's something that is an unfortunate side effect in humans.
That's pretty cool.
It's not something that happens in every animal, because you don't want to add, a whole bunch of bony pieces to the thing that tends to die around you because of the things on your head. But in humans, even if you survive, it's got this weird side effect.
I also kind of like the idea that... So we have this creature that I love now that is a gigantic bipes. Bipes, by the way. Bipes. For anyone that wants to look it up.
Yes, yes.
That it's gigantic bipes whose head is infected by larvae.
Yep.
Of some kind of wasp or horrible moth.
Which probably means it lives somewhere very warm, so this is happening year-round.
Yes, and that's where it's able to grow very large.
So it's tropical.
But also the parasites are probably feeding off of the animal itself.
Yeah, it's blood flow, it's maybe the upper layers of tissue.
Yep. Which would imply that our giant bipes, when infected, is likely to be unhealthy. And thus perhaps acting erratically.
Yes.
Which might explain why people come into contact. Because bipes today are very secretive.
Yes, absolutely.
They're digging, you don't see them. But if you're unhealthy and you're desperate and you're looking for food and you don't know what to do, or if you've got host manipulation going on and your larvae are saying, hey, go to the surface where we can metamorphose and fly away.
Yep.
Now you have this erratic behaving, round-faced, little smile, 2 big mole arms, giant bipes with a bunch of worms coming out of its head.
Yeah.
That if you look at it funny, all of its larvae will shoot their venom at you.
I like, and because that also means that the only time you would typically see a Gorgon is while infected.
Yeah, exactly.
So that means there could be time later on where people suddenly go, oh wow, no, I found a hairless Gorgon.
Yeah, normally they're not like that.
Yeah.
They're rather pleasant.
Yeah, weird.
I also like this because it means that cute, adorable bipes is still fairly innocuous.
Yes.
Just a victim.
Yeah, exactly. It's just now this big host body.
Yep.
Cool. That also that does pair fairly nicely with the version of the story where Medusa was punished by the gods to be a Gorgon. I like that. Cool.
Now, we did manage to go through a whole discussion on snake people without actually invoking snakes.
Yeah.
But maybe there'll be time later.
Yep, we'll see. We'll see if we can fit it in somewhere.
We'll see. I like our Bipes Medusa.
I enjoy it. Bipes Medusa. So Bipes Medusa for this episode. And tune in next episode to see what our next creature will be next Saturday. So a week from now, we're going to wrap this one up.
Indeed. 2 more Spookies to go for 2019.
We're halfway through. Please let us know if you have any comments on Bipes Medusa.
Yes, if you have your own ideas or suggestions, speculative evolution is fun and cooperative.
How would you turn someone to stone?
And we'll see you next time for even more fun discussion.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Common Descent podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and check our WordPress blog for pictures and links after each episode. Huge thanks to our patrons whose support helps keep this podcast running and who get access to bonus goodies on Patreon. The song you're hearing is called On the Origin of Species by Protodome, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.